Hello again, I'm Robert Fitton, and I absolutely promise this is my last Record Store Day video for this year. I know I've been all about Record Store Day for the last couple of videos, and this is my final one, I promise. But I did say, like I said in the first one, I did go overboard this year and end up buying like 14 albums. I've already done reviews of these in my previous videos, so if you want to see those reviews, you can check that out. Rain Parade actually linked with Mazzy Star. I did not realize that. Thanks for those comments. Tad, pretty good. This was great. 300% Dynamite, all the reggae stuff. Doors was good, except for the microphone dropout for like half of when the music's over. But this is miles better than that awful bootleg release from last year. And this was the Crown Jewel Parliament and their debut. Now, I really liked all of those albums. Some I liked more than others. There are a few disappointments with the other 7, just a warning there. Let's start it off with David Bowie and Waiting in the Sky. I really was intrigued by this. I'd read a little bit about it. I don't know if I should have read more because it's not the information on exactly what this is not really available. You can see here that the inner sleeve is one of those ones that look like a recording tape from that session. Has all the notes on there, and it said this is what Ziggy Stardust, the album, was supposed to sound like originally. And it's from a master tape, and it gave the date that the master tape was recorded and all this kind of stuff. And there's a couple of different tracks on here that are not on the Ziggy Stardust album, and then, of course, a few tracks from the Ziggy Stardust album that are missing from here. And I wrongfully assumed, and you know what happens when you assume, I wrongfully assumed that these were like earlier versions of the songs, that these were not going to sound the same as the one on the Ziggy Stardust album, and I was incorrect. These are actually the exact same versions that you get on Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars album. The exact same version of 5 Years and Soul Love and Hang On to Yourself and the title track Ziggy Stardust and more. They're the exact same versions. So basically you get Round and Round, which, first of all of the tracks that are on here that are not on the 1972 album, you can get as B-sides. They were all B-sides later released. Like the Chuck Berry remake, Round and Round, which does not really suit David Bowie, in my opinion. You've got a cover version of the song Amsterdam. It's just kind of there. Couple others as well. Velvet Goldmine, which of course later released as a B-side again. And then you get the songs you know and love from the 1972 Ziggy Stardust album. Again, the exact same mixes, the exact same versions. The B-sides are the exact same. If you're really into David Bowie and you've heard those B-sides, they're the exact same. So basically this is like making a playlist of what it would sound like. But I assumed wrongfully that these were earlier versions of the song, and they're not. So I was actually a little bit disappointed with the Waiting in the Sky David Bowie release. But it's still a great listen. But I can definitely see why they would change the track listing for the actual Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars album from 1972, because that is a much better, it's got a much better flow. You can hear the concept a lot more in that. No Suffragette City on here. No Starman on here. This is not, I can see why they changed the track listing at the supposed last minute. Gandalf was great to get this. This was another record store release that, this one I already had, but wait a minute, this one's on green vinyl. So had to have this one, green vinyl. Woo! This is actually green with little yellow swirls in it. It's called Lemongrass vinyl. I don't know who comes up with the names of some of these color variants, but Lemongrass vinyl. This one actually has a nice inner sleeve too, with photos and liner notes from Peter Sando, the guitarist of Gandalf. And it actually gives a little more information than I'd previously known about this band. They actually were called Gandalf and the Wizards, and it was the art department that shortened their name to Gandalf, the art department for Capitol Records. I already had this reissue. I assumed this was a bootleg. I thought, there I go, assuming again. I thought this was a bootleg, but then I looked again on Discogs. They have taken the unofficial status off of this. So this actually has been reissued a couple of times with an official re-release, and this is it. This one sounds just a touch more dynamic. If you have one of these official re-releases from like the 2015 or whatever, this isn't going to sound that much better. I mean, this does boast that it was mastered and cut by Kevin Gray. Always does a stellar job, but it's not that much better. This isn't that good of a recording to begin with. The vocal distortions are still there. The tape dropouts late in side 2 are still there. Those are apparently part of the master recording. So it's going to have that distortion no matter if you're listening to it on the original, which Funkadelic has that, and he's answered my question. Yes, they sound that way on the original. It's going to sound that way if you stream it, and it's going to sound that way on the vinyl reissues, including this one. But this one's got the nice green vinyl. The great liner notes here telling you a little more about the band. This does not mention, though, how the legend of this being, the misfortune of this band, and how Capitol Records distributed many, many copies of this with the wrong record inside. And then they did not switch out the record. They just gave people their money back, through the record stores. So, misfortune there. It took a long time for this to get released. The band had already broken up by the time that this came out. So, but it's a great piece of 1969 psychedelic nostalgia. And glad to finally have this with, the pictures and, the words from one of the people actually in the band, letting you know that this is pretty authentic stuff here. It's re-released on Jackpot Records, and like I said, the sound is a little bit better. You get a little more bass, especially with the effects on songs like Can You Make Your Way in the Dark, and the second song on here as well, Hang On to a Dream, where it has that low growl. You can definitely hear that a little richer in this particular pressing. I've already reviewed this album when I talked about when I got that other reissue. When I first got that, I went over all the songs, so you can check that out if you want a more in-depth review of this. But if you like the psych, kind of more of a light psych, a little folk psych going on, check out Gandalf if you have not heard it. A lot of Tim Hardin covers on here, and thanks to these liner notes, I finally have my answer as to why they covered so many Tim Hardin songs. The club they used to play at, the owner of the club, used to play Tim Hardin albums all the time over and over again, so they got to really appreciate those songs. And it says in the liner notes, again written by the guitarist, that they actually wanted to do for Tim Hardin what the Byrds did for Bob Dylan. What were we thinking? It actually says, what were we thinking? But if you don't know who Tim Hardin is, he was a folk guy. He wrote If I Were a Carpenter and wrote Reason to Believe that Rod Stewart did. He was actually on the Woodstock 69 festival. He was not in the movie performing. You can see him, though, in the Woodstock movie, walking around with an acoustic guitar, completely wasted or drunk or something, just playing his guitar and then talking about, those motorcycles, those do a lot for the music. Tim Hardin is that guy. So yeah, Gandalf, I would definitely recommend that, especially if you don't have any of the Gandalf reissues or anything. That would be the one to get. Let's see, where are we at? No, there's my reissue, and we're up to, this. I wanted to mention this too. I reviewed this last time as well. It is Blur's Park Life. I did a whole review on my last video about the music on here. I just want to give you an update on the Zoetrope vinyl. This vinyl you're supposed to put on your turntable. It's got all these wonderful animations on here, and it's supposed to look like the dogs are running and all this stuff is going on due to the magic of Zoetrope. And I could not get it to work on my turntable. It ended up being just a blur. Thanks to everyone who commented on that and gave me suggestions like, oh, you need a strobe light to see that. Well, unfortunately, I'm not a club owner in 1979, so I don't have a strobe light. I do have a mirror ball. I have a disco ball. No strobe light. Don't have a fog machine either. You need an app to see this. And then I see that there's a bunch of apps listed that you can use that don't exist. So again, the jokes continue. Your turntable is at the wrong speed. So I tried this on a different turntable that has variable speed pitch on it. Variable speed pitch. I went up and down slowly. Still a blur. So I'm pretty much assuming that it is what I originally assumed. It's not really a Zoetrope. It's just a blur. And special thanks to EMI, who put out a video showing it working with no strobe effect, no app. Just put it on the turntable and it will work. Very clever. I love a clever joke. I'm not being sarcastic. That is very clever to put out a Zoetrope thing, put out a video showing it working, and then you play it and it's just a blur. And now that Record Store Day is, we're a few days past that, the reviews are coming back from good old average everyday people like myself who also, it doesn't work. And I've seen other Zoetrope records that you just put them on the turntable and the effect happens. You don't need apps and strobe lights and whatever. My fault. I broke two of my rules. Not only did I buy a reissue of 90s music that is meant for a CD, rule number one broken, I also bought what is basically a picture disc. So yeah, I will. My fault. Totally my fault. I am going to stick with it. I'm getting rid of this. I do not want this. I'm going back to the Blur CD that I've had for 30 years. This is the way it was intended. This is the way Blur Park Live should be listened to, and I will be happy with this. And just like any great joke, I'm going to pass this joke along to someone else, and maybe they will find it as funny as I did. But enough about disappointments and joke releases and things like that. How about something I'm actually pleased with? This new compilation from Soul Jazz Records called Punk 45, The American Nation Destroys Its Young Underground Punk in the United States of America, Volume 1. It's quite a long title, not to mention the 2 song title references here, which I probably can't even say on YouTube without getting censored or something like that. But yeah, this is a great 2-disc compilation. Just like it says, Punk 45s from the US, a lot of them from the mid-late 70s. I think there's one from 1980. But this is, this Soul Jazz Records company, I'm not really that familiar with them, but I need to get, obviously, a lot more familiar with them. They're doing a lot more, obviously, than soul and jazz. Here's a Punk 45 compilation. And great artwork. They really do things well. This is the same company that did the 300% Dynamite reggae and ska Jamaican compilation that I showed in my last video. And just like the packaging on that one, this one's great too. Shows the cover to all of the 45s. Got a blurb about each band, each song, all the band members listed, where they're from, the date it was recorded, all that good stuff. And just like the 300% Dynamite, you get these great inner sleeves that just make you want to get more from this record compilation company. I mean, just incredible releases it looks like on here. This is how you advertise on an inner sleeve. You advertise for yourself, not for vodka. But anyway, orange vinyl on both of the records. The sound, I won't say is incredible because it's Punk 45s, but it does sound like it's taken from the best source. I'll say it like that. And a lot of great tunes on here. Some of these I've heard hundreds of times. Some of these I weren't familiar with at all. You gotta love some of the tracks on here, like the Nervous Eaters from Boston with the hilarious, very, very cranked up song, Just Head. Just got time for Head. Yeah, that is on here. That's one of my favorites on here. Also, there's the group from Cleveland, X blank X with You're Full of Shit, and everybody knows it. How many people could you probably dedicate that song to? But yeah, great tracks on here. Like I said, some of them are classic. Iggy and the Stooges on here. This doesn't have a lot of really huge bands. There's no Ramones, there's no Misfits, nothing like that. But it does have Iggy and the Stooges. It does have the Flaming Groovies, sounding very, very early, very, very punk for those guys. And it does have some different flavors of the scene at the time. You know, you even get some kind of like new wave weird stuff with this band called Crash Course in Science from, I believe, Philadelphia. They've got Cakes in the House, which sounds like a rap song from the Fat Boys or something like that, but it is not. So you get a little bit of new wave stuff in there. You do get, there's a lot of great stuff. The classic from the Heartbreakers, Chinese Rocks, closes the whole thing off. They really did save the best for last. I'm a Bug from the Urinals is the first track, kind of a quirky kind of stuff. So you get the funny, quirky stuff. You get the really just slamming, just rocking out stuff. You get the stuff you can really pogo to, like the Earthquake Shake on here as well. So just a lot of great tunes on here. There's some that are just kind of like borderline okay. Like the title tracks here. Neither one of these songs are stellar, but they're all right, I guess. The one about the hippies, though, I mean, I'm glad to see that the hippies and the punks made up in the 80s and finally realized that they were both on the same side, basically. So that was nice to see. But you do get that track going back to the 70s when they were on different sides for whatever reason. I think it even says, do that to the hippies because their hair's too long. So that song is actually from 1979. You can definitely tell that's when punk started getting a little less interesting. Here Come All the Rules. Every time there's a new musical genre that really takes off, it always starts to, it's starting to die off when the rules come in. Same thing with the heavy metal. Here come the rules. You can't have long hair. You can't dress like this. You got to wear that. You got to have a safety pin. You got to talk like this. You got to have your hair in a spot. It's like, I'm not into rule. I thought we were anarchy. What happened to that? Anyway, Punk 45, excellent compilation, put together really, really well. The packaging on this is just stellar. Love that, with all the information on all the groups and the group members, when it was out, where they're from. This whole inner sleeve with all the different, and it's actually just like the 300% Dynamite, the 2 inner sleeves are different. So it's all of these releases and then more releases on the other inner sleeve, and then the orange vinyl, which is a plus. This was actually very similar to a release that came out in 2013, but the track listing is slightly different, and there's more tracks on this. So I think Soul Jazz Records does kind of update their older releases, and instead of just re-releasing them, they actually update them with different songs, and the 300% Dynamite was the same way. So into punk, I would definitely check out Punk 45 from Soul Jazz Records. More punk rock with the Ramones and the 1975 Sire demos. I've heard demos from the Ramones before. They were bonus tracks on some of their early albums, but these seem to be different demos. These seem to be later demos because those demos were very, very raw. These are a little more polished. They sound more professional. So I think these come between those demos and then, of course, the actual album versions. This comes in a nice polylined black sleeve, which is great that it's polylined. First encounter with those of Record Store Day releases this year. And this great clear black splatter vinyl with the Ramones Sire Demos release. It sounds like the Ramones. If you know the Ramones, you love the Ramones, you will not be disappointed by this. A lot of them sound pretty close to what it ended up being the album versions. The Ramones obviously, you know, pretty raw anyway. I mean, it's not like they were super polished, great, you know, huge production, progressive rock type group. I mean, so this is pretty much the same thing, but it's just a little bit of the shine, you know, not there yet with these early demos. Listening to this with songs like Loudmouth that kicks it off, and 53rd and 3rd, and You Never Should Have Opened That Door. 3 songs on side 1. This dude's got a knife stabbing people. So you start to realize the Ramones are always kind of known for like being just quirky and fun and goofy and just, you know, sped up loud pop music, basically. You know, it's just fun. But they can be kind of vicious if you really, you know, especially when you start stripping them down. And this doesn't even have Beat on the Brat with a baseball bat on it. So, yeah, some of the humor, I guess, is kind of not there yet. It's still pretty raw stuff. So it definitely sounds like more of like the, you know, the 77 punk from the UK more than the 76 US punk that they brought to us. But yeah, the Ramones, if you're a Ramones fan, you gotta check this out at least once. You know, you might want to pick this up, especially cool looking vinyl like that. I love the cover too, how they're just on the subway there. This is probably somebody's grandparents now. Didn't even realize they were going to be a part of a Ramones album cover. But yeah, the Sire demos from 1975 from Ramones, a great listen there, and really brings out kind of like, you know, like their viciousness a little more than the polish on the actual releases. So where do we go from punk? A couple of punk releases? Well, obviously disco. Goes right there with the punk stuff, right? Carol Douglas, and this is called Night Fever. This is a compilation album with what seems to be 7 songs, but it's really only 6 songs. I guess there was a mistake made. But yeah, it starts off with the Bee Gees cover, or cover of the Bee Gees, Night Fever. Also has Light My Fire, a Doors cover, done disco style. It's already been done disco style by Anita Ward with, you know, she did Knock on Wood. But yeah, disco. Look at that hot pink disco. That's some disco right there. But, you know, Carol Douglas had the big, he's basically a one-hit wonder, had the hit Doctor's Orders. Doctor's orders say there's no cure for... That one. We all know it and love it, right? But I thought that was always kind of a fun disco song, so I wanted to see what some of her other stuff was like. And this was one of those Record Store Day releases that was regional only, so I thought it might end up being kind of rare. But great cover there, you know, kind of goes with the hot pink vinyl. But it's basically just a lot of fluff disco. There's one great one on here. You know, the Let's Get Down to Doing It Tonight. You know, it's kind of fun, kind of, you know, kind of suggestive or whatever. But it's basically a lot of like real fluffy disco. There's not a lot of that high energy, like, you know, stuff from '79 on that can be found on some disco records from that era, but it does have a remix of I Got the Answer. And the thing I was saying earlier, it's got 7 tracks listed on both the back cover and the label, but this song Lovesick is not on here. It's just not. It's 3 songs on each side. So I don't, maybe, you know what, maybe you have to have a strobe light or a phone app to hear the song Lovesick. Or maybe I'm just not playing the record at the right speed. But to my ears, the song Lovesick is not a part of this, and so you've got kind of a misprint here. With Carol Douglas and her disco album. This is a nice companion to the Funkadelic that I showed last time. The Osmium, their debut, great Record Store Day release. This is the Westbound Sound. This is the Funkadelic label. So Funkadelic is on here with I Bet You, which is for some reason an edited version. This says this is curated by Record Store Day. I didn't know a day could curate things. I thought people curated things, but apparently this was curated by Record Store Day, and whoever did that decided that we should get an edit of a Funkadelic song. I Bet You is a good song. It's not my favorite Funkadelic song by any stretch of the imagination, but that kicks this off. You've got you got the Detroit Emeralds on here, as well as Donald Austin is a part of this. You've got Spanky Wilson. You've got Dennis Coffey with a great instrument. Livewire's great. CJ and Company, with the Devil's Gun. You know, that album that's got that incredible cover art on there, Devil's Gun. That song is on here as well as the Ohio Players and the single mix of Funky Worm with Granny in there telling you all about the Funky Worm. He comes out of his hole and he plays like this. Again, there are better Ohio Player songs, but this is really early Ohio Players when they were still on the Westbound Records. So a nice sampling of Westbound Records on here. I believe, if I remember correctly, this is black vinyl. Yeah, just black vinyl and, you know, a replica of the original Westbound label. I did notice this, though, on the inner sleeve, you get an advertisement, a huge advertisement for Tito's Homemade Vodka on both sides. First time I've ever seen an inner sleeve be used as a commercial, basically. So I don't know if that's going to start a trend or not, but yeah, just a big-ass advertisement for America's original craft vodka, Tito's Homemade Vodka. So maybe they were able to actually keep the price down, because this was only like 26 bucks or something like that. Maybe they were able to keep the price down by, you know, offsetting it with an advertisement in the inner sleeve there, or an advertisement as the inner sleeve, I should say. But yeah, it's got a nice mix of some funk, a little bit of more of a disco stuff going on, some great tracks on here, and some okay ones. So it's a decent listen, especially for that price. The Westbound sound, you might recognize that picture, Funkadelic fans. And finally, we have Electri Fiction and Burned. This is the Ian McCullen side project. He, of course, from Echo and the Bunnymen. But this does not sound like Echo and the Bunnymen. This is a harder sound. It's definitely got that 90s sound. I want to say this is from 96 or somewhere around there. First time on vinyl. I didn't know much about this at the time, and it was not in my plans, hence the going overboard. A lot of these I was kind of on the fence about, ended up getting all of them. This one, though, people were really excited about this and talked about it. Oh my God, Electri Fiction's finally out. I got to get that out. I got to get it. Oh my God, but my favorite of all of this is the Electri Fiction. So I thought I would get this to see what all of everybody was talking about. You know what I mean? And it's another one of those where I broke my rule about getting 90s releases that are obviously meant to be CDs and then kind of retrofitted for a vinyl record decades later. But that's what I got. It's all right. It's a good listen all the way through. A lot of the songs sound kind of similar. There's a few on here that kind of stand out. Time Bomb with its, it's kind of ascending and sound there, and because apparently a time bomb's going to go off. But yeah, a lot of it sounds somewhat similar. It sounds kind of like that, a little bit of the industrial, not too much, mixed in with the, the harder rock sound. But a lot of this is not. I've only heard it twice, so maybe if I listen to it a couple more times, some things will start to pop out. But right now, a lot of it's just not really that memorable. But yeah, a lot of people really are into this. So I'm going to check this out a couple more times and see if I can, pick up on some things that people are really into for this. But yeah, a good listen all the way through, though. Electri Fiction and Burned. And that is going to do it. Probably could have got the CD for that for $3. But, got caught up. Got caught up in the moment with Record Store Day. And that's going to wrap up the releases. Remember, I did review the other 7 albums I got in my previous video, and I've got another video that I did live from Riverbend Records on Record Store Day, showing everybody going around grabbing their records, and I actually picked up quite a few records. I mean, 40 or 50 records, and showed you the back cover and the front cover and all that, and talked about them while I was in the store. So you might want to check that out as well. Unfortunately, that live video is a vertical video. I could not make it horizontal. I explain all of that in the live video, so you can check those out as well. And I promise my next video will not be a Record Store Day video. You have my word on it. I'm Robert Fithen. Thank you so much for watching.